Nearly 55% of the blood is constituted of plasma, or it is made up of plasma. The RBCs, they are non-nucleated, they do not have a nucleus, whereas the WBCs are nucleated, they have a nucleus. Plasma contains coagulation factors or clotting factors, but serum are also a form of plasma which do not contain the coagulation factors or the clotting factors. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to today's session on chapter 18, that is body fluids and circulation. I am Dr. Divya, biology faculty, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Mysuru, Temple of Excellence. So we all know that blood is one of the important component of the human body, right? And it is a connective tissue. Its main function is to carry various nutrients, minerals and all sorts of other substances, be it the gases, that is the oxygen and the carbon dioxide, throughout to different parts of the body. So, blood is one of the important circulatory system in not just human beings but also in animals. So, we shall study in this particular chapter exactly what is blood, what are the different components of blood, and how circulation of blood occurs, all that we shall look into. So, moving on to today's session, we shall understand first what exactly is blood. What is it actually made up of? What are the different elements that are present in the blood? So, moving on to what is blood. So, blood, it is a special connective tissue. So, we had learnt about the tissue system in human body, right, wherein we had studied the various types of tissues, that such as the muscular tissues, the connective tissues and all that, if you remember. And if you don't remember, I'll tell you once again what a connective tissue is. So, connective tissue is something which connects different sections of the body. Here, say for example, between the bones also we have connective tissue in the form of ligaments, right? So, just like that, blood is a kind of connective tissue which actually supports, shapes and gives a proper structure to all the other tissues. And not just that, it forms a connectivity between different tissues. Why? Because blood is one such fluid that actually travels through the veins in our body, reaching different organs, carrying various gaseous substances, minerals, nutrients and all other different substances to various parts of the body. So that is why we can consider blood to be a connective tissue here. So this particular connective tissue, blood, it consists of a fluid matrix, it consists of plasma and it consists of formed elements. So we shall study about each of these one by one. So what is plasma? What are the different formed elements that are present? All these. So talking about what is blood, it is a special connective tissue which consists of fluid matrix, plasma and various formed elements. So next, talking about plasma. So plasma is one of the important components of the blood. Plasma is sometimes colorless, or also plasma can be somewhat a light yellowish color, just like the color of amber, a slight yellowish color. But this plasma, it is colorless because it doesn't have the pigment hemoglobin. The blood is colored, it is red in color. Why it is red in color? Because it is made up of the other formed elements such as RBCs, WBCs, platelets, etc. Wherein the RBC is one such formed element of the blood that contains hemoglobin. And that hemoglobin is the one that actually provides the red color to the blood. But in the case of plasma here, plasma is also a constituent of blood, but the only thing is plasma is not red color like blood. It is a straw colored. So if you have seen paddy straws, right? So what is the color of a paddy straw? It is somewhat golden brown in color, or the color of amber that we see. So all that is nothing but it is a bit golden yellow in color. So that is how exactly plasma looks like. So if you see here, you can see the color of plasma. Not just that, if you have had a wound or something, you might have seen along with blood, after the blood oozes out, when the blood is trying to dry up, what happens? After that, some yellowish form of liquid will ooze out, right? That is nothing but plasma. Why that plasma actually oozes out is because to prevent the infection or any other infectious agent from entering into the open wound. So to protect that, this plasma oozes out. So that is nothing but the plasma that is present in the blood. So it is straw colored, it is a viscous fluid, and it consists nearly 55% of the blood. So nearly 55% of the blood is constituted of plasma, or it is made up of plasma, and 90 to 92% of plasma is just water. So in blood, 55% of the blood is made up of plasma. And what is the plasma made up of? 90 to 92% of the plasma is made up of water, and it is also made up of proteins, but proteins that is present is just 6 to 8%. So therefore, majority of the component that is present in plasma is water. Apart from that, little bit of proteins are also present in the plasma. So what are the different types of proteins? I told you plasma is made up of 6 to 8% of proteins. So what are they? They are nothing but fibrinogen, globulins and albumin. So these three are the major proteins that are present in the plasma, and they have their own specific function. What are the function? We shall see in the coming slides here. So moving further, fibrinogen. So I told you the plasma is made up of 6 to 8% of proteins. What type of proteins? They are globulins, albumins and fibrinogens, right? So we shall look into what are these fibrinogens. What exactly is the function of the fibrinogen? So these fibrinogens, they are mainly needed for clotting or coagulation of the blood. So whenever we get a wound or something, the blood oozes out. Will the blood ooze out continuously? No. What will happen if the blood oozes out continuously and it will not stop? The person will die, right? So that is a time when the blood has to stop its flow. If the blood has to stop its flow in that wound area, the clotting of the blood has to occur. And if the clotting of the blood has to occur along with platelets, the proteins present in the blood, which is called as fibrinogen, is very, very important. Therefore, the main function of the protein fibrinogen is to help in the clotting, or in other terms, it is also called as coagulation of the blood. Next is globulin, which is also one of the major protein present in the plasma of the blood. So globulins, the main function is defense mechanisms of the body. I told you, right, whenever we have a wound, what happens after the oozing of the blood, you can see brown colored or somewhat watery kind of sticky fluid oozing out. So that actually contains a lot of immune cells that protects our body against infections. So that is why it oozes out. So that is nothing but because of the globulins that are present in the protein. And next is albumin. So albumins, they help in maintaining a osmotic balance. Not just that, these albumins that are present in the blood help in preventing the leakage of fluid from the blood. So the blood actually travels through vessels, right? We all know that. But sometimes the blood contains a lot of fluid. These fluids should not leak out of the blood. They should travel how it has to go. Along with the blood, the fluids have to travel. So in order to prevent the leakage of these fluids also, this particular albumin, which is an important protein in the plasma, helps. So therefore, now we have understood what is the function of the plasma. The function of the plasma is plasma. It is a somewhat colorless, or it is a straw colored component or fluid that is present in the blood, which is made up of different types of proteins such as fibrinogen, globulin and albumin. And the main function of the plasma is to help in clotting or coagulation of the blood, is to help in providing defense mechanism to the body during times of wound. And not just that, it also helps in maintaining a osmotic balance in the blood. So this is the function of the plasma. Because each of the proteins that are there, they have this specific function. But altogether, where are these proteins present? They are present in the plasma, right? So that is why. So this is about the plasma, which is a component of the blood. So next, moving on to studying about other types of substances. So plasma, apart from having proteins, that is 6 to 8%, they are made up of proteins, right? Apart from that, they also contain certain small amounts of minerals. Minerals such as sodium, calcium, magnesium, bicarbonates and chlorine. So these are the different types of minerals that are present in the blood. And they also contain some glucose, which is a form of sugar. They contain amino acids, which are nothing but very important for building up of proteins, and they also contain lipids, etc. So what did we understand about plasma? That is, about 90 to 92% of the plasma is made up of water. In that, 6 to 8% is made up of proteins, and remaining percentage that is there, it is made up of small amounts of minerals like sodium, calcium, magnesium, chlorine and bicarbonates. And not just that, they also contain various compounds such as glucose, amino acids, lipids, etc. And all these are carried, or they are transited, or they are carried in the body to different parts of the organ. And the factors for coagulation or clotting are also present in the plasma. But usually they are present in the plasma in an inactive form. This is very important. You need to remember. Of course, plasma has coagulation factors, right? What is a coagulation factor that is present in plasma? It is the fibrinogen protein. That fibrinogen we had studied. Plasma is made up of 3 types of major proteins, that is the fibrinogen, the globulin and the albumins, right? In that, fibrinogen was the protein that actually helped in the clotting of the blood. But do you think that the fibrinogen protein will be active throughout? No. What will happen if it is active throughout? Will the blood flow properly in a body? No, right? It will start to coagulate, it will start to clot. But should the blood clot? No, the blood has to clot. But when it has to clot? Only when it is oozing out of the body during wound and all, then the blood has to clot. But otherwise, when it is flowing inside our body, the blood should not clot. So that is why the factors for coagulation, or the clotting factors that are present in the blood, especially the protein, that is the fibrinogen, it is always in the inactive form. Only when there is an injury or something, when the blood is flowing out of the body, then it actually becomes active and the blood clots. So that important point we need to understand here. Apart from plasma, the blood also contains a colorless component which is called as the serum. So serum is also a form of plasma, but only thing is serum, it does not contain any clotting factors. So those plasma which do not contain any clotting factors are called as the serum. So if you can see here, the serum that is present in the blood, plasma of the blood, and you can see the blood here. So blood consists of components such as plasma and serum. Plasma contains coagulation factors or clotting factors, but serum are also a form of plasma which do not contain the coagulation factors or the clotting factors. So moving further, we shall talk about the formed elements, because I told you blood also consists of formed elements, right? So what are the different formed elements of the blood? The formed elements of the blood are the erythrocytes, which are nothing but the red blood corpuscles or red blood cells, also called as the RBCs. Then we have one more formed elements, which are the leukocytes, which are called as the white blood corpuscles or white blood cells, or the WBCs. Then there is this clotting factor that is present in the blood, which is called as the platelets. So these are the different formed elements that are present in the blood. Don't get confused with the clotting factor that is present in plasma. That is different. But there are certain formed elements called as platelets present in the blood, which also help in clotting. So we shall study about these three one by one. So first, talking about the erythrocytes, which are also called as the red blood cells, or you can also call it as the red blood corpuscles. So these erythrocytes are the most abundant formed elements. So there are different formed elements such as erythrocytes, leukocytes and WBCs. Out of the three, erythrocytes are the most abundant of all the cells in the blood. And a healthy adult human being On an average, actually, he produces 5 million to 5.5 million of RBCs per cubic millimeter of blood. So, in a healthy human being, per cubic millimeter of blood produces 5 million to 5.5 millions of RBC. So, the blood contains a lot of RBC when compared to WBCs and the platelets. And RBCs, where exactly are they formed? So, in a bone, especially the spinal cord region of the bone, wherein the bone marrow cells are present. So, they are formed in the red bone marrow in the adults. So, that is the region where they are actually formed. And RBCs, they are devoid of nucleus. That is, they do not have any nucleus. And they are biconcave in shape. So, biconcave, one side is curved, the other side is flat. So, they are almost biconcave in shape. So, almost you can see one side is curved and the other side a little bit of flat. So, they are biconcave in shape. So, this is about the RBCs. And RBCs, if you look at the RBC, the name itself says they are called red blood cells, meaning they are the cells which actually are red in color, therefore providing color to the blood. Why is the RBC red? It should have something, right, to make it red in color. We shall look into what it is exactly. So, they have a red colored iron containing complex protein called as hemoglobin. So, one RBC. So, one RBC cell, if I take this particular RBC cell, you can see it is red in color. The color of the cell is red, right? Why? Because it contains hemoglobin. Why this hemoglobin is red and is actually providing that red color? It is because they are made up of iron complexes. So, each hemoglobin is made up of 4 iron molecules, and this iron that is present in the hemoglobin is the one that actually provides the red color to the blood, and hence the color and the name of these cells. Hence, because of the presence of the red colored iron containing complex called as hemoglobin in the RBCs, that is why the RBCs have been named as the red blood cells. And a healthy individual has 12 to 16 grams of hemoglobin in every 100 ml of blood. So, you might have noticed sometimes the doctor suggests for a hemoglobin test, right? So, in that they would have mentioned a clinical range. Usually, it will be between 16 or 11 to 19 and all that, right? So, that is how a person is healthy if he's having too much of red blood cells, and if he's very healthy, then at least it means that he has about 12 to 16 grams of hemoglobin for every 100 ml of the blood. And these molecules, they have a very important function. The function of these red blood cells is to transport respiratory gases, because each of these hemoglobin molecule, this iron component of the hemoglobin, they can capture oxygen and they can transport oxygen. So, that is why where is the hemoglobin present? In the red blood cell. Therefore, the red blood cell is the one that actually carries oxygen to different parts of the body. So, the main role is in transport of respiratory gases. So, we had studied this in respiration chapter, right? Breathing and exchange of gases, how the red blood cells from the alveoli, they collect the oxygen and deliver it to the cells, and from the cells or the tissues, and from there they carry the deoxygenated blood, or they carry the carbon dioxide related blood back to the heart, and all that we had studied, right? How the circulation occurs, how the purification occurs, everything we studied, both in the chapter circulation related to the heart and also exchange of gases, that is respiration chapter. So, there we came to know about this. If you have any doubts, please look into those chapters again. So, these molecules play a very important role in transport of respiratory gases, and these RBCs, they are not immortal. Means they do not live as such throughout the individual's lifespan. They also die, they get destroyed. So, what is the lifespan of an RBC? The RBC have an average lifespan of 120 days. After 120 days, again the RBCs get replenished. Again, how? Based on the condition, based on the type of food we eat and all that, the blood gets replaced, or in specific to say, the RBCs get replaced. So, therefore, the average lifespan of an RBC in a adult human being is just 120 days, after which they are destroyed in the spleen. So they move into the spleen, and there they get destroyed. So that is why spleen is called as the graveyard of RBCs. So there the death of the RBC cells will take place, and again the bone marrow will start to produce new RBC cells. So that is why the bone marrow is very, very important here. So this is about the formed element RBCs. So next, moving on to talking about the one more formed element of the blood, that is leukocytes, which are called as the white blood cells or the WBCs. The name itself suggests they are white blood cells. They are white in color, or you can say they are colorless in nature. So they are colorless. Why? Because they do not have hemoglobin. That is, they do not have the iron complex protein, that is hemoglobin. So this hemoglobin is present only in RBC, and it will give red color to the RBC, but WBCs lack them. So that is the reason they are not colored. They are colorless in nature. And WBCs are nucleated. If you remember, I had told you RBCs are non-nucleated. They are devoid of nucleus. They do not have a nucleus. So in this particular case, the WBCs are nucleated. So this is the difference between the RBCs and the WBCs. So please remember, the RBCs, they are non-nucleated. They do not have a nucleus, whereas the WBCs are nucleated. They have a nucleus. And if you look at the amount of WBC that are present in a human being, it is about, that is a healthy human being, it is about 6,000 to 8,000 per millimeter, per cubic millimeter of the blood. What a vast difference, right? I had told you RBCs are the major formed elements that are present in the blood. And how much amount of RBCs was there in the blood? It was 5 million to 5.5 million. If you see here, it is 5 million to 5.5 million. But imagine, where is 5 million to 5.5 million and where is 6,000 to 8,000? Such a vast difference. So that is why RBCs are present in more abundance in the blood when compared to the WBCs and the platelets. So WBCs is just about 6,000 to 8,000 cubic millimeter of the blood, and they are generally short-lived. They have not given an approximate value here. That is, what is the lifespan of WBC? The lifespan of RBC was 120 days, but the lifespan of WBC is quite short-lived. It does not live as long as the RBCs do. And the WBCs are of two major categories. One is called as the granulocytes and the other one is the agranulocytes. So if you can see here, the granulocytes and the agranulocytes that are present. So we shall study about each of these one by one. So the name itself suggests granulocytes means they have granular-like substances in them. That is why they are called as the granulocytes. Agranulocytes, they do not have granular-like substances in them. So that is why they are called as the agranulocytes. So we shall look into these granulocytes and the agranulocytes. So again, the granulocytes and the agranulocytes are divided, wherein under granulocytes they are made up of neutrophils, eosinophils and basophils, and the agranulocytes, they are of two types, lymphocytes and monocytes. You can see granulocytes, right? Granulocytes, they are made up of neutrophils, eosinophils and basophils. So if you can see inside the granulocytes, you can see that there are small specks, or they are small granular substances that are present inside. Hence, they are called as granulocytes. Now, I'll show you the difference with agranulocytes. So, if you can see agranulocytes, inside you do not see granular-like substances, right? So, that is why they are called as agranulocytes, and they are of two types, monocyte and lymphocyte. So, we shall look into each of these. What is the function exactly? We shall look into it. So, talking about the different granulocytes and the agranulocytes. So, what are the different granulocytes? The different granulocytes are the eosinophils, the neutrophils and the basophils, right? So, we shall see what exactly their functions are. So, talking about neutrophils. So, neutrophils are the most abundant cells. So, out of eosinophils, out of basophils, neutrophils occupy 60 to 65%. So 60 to 65% of the WBCs or the leukocytes are made up of neutrophils. So 60 to 65% of the total WBCs are made up of neutrophils, and basophils are the least in percentage. That is, only 0.5 to 1% of the leukocytes or the WBCs are made up of basophils. So all these are 1-mark questions. They can also ask for NEET exam. So all these are very, very important. Talking about neutrophils and monocytes. So neutrophils, what are these neutrophils? They are the components of the granulocytes. Monocytes are the components of the agranulocytes. So talking about neutrophils and monocytes, which are, that is 6 to 8% of the neutrophils and monocytes, they are phagocytic cells. What do we mean by phagocytic cells? Means neutrophils and monocytes. That is, we know that neutrophils are the most abundant granulocytes present in the WBC. That is, 60 to 65% of the WBC is made up of the neutrophils. And we also know that apart from that, there are certain agranulocytes also present in the WBCs, right? One among them is the monocytes. So, among the granulocytes and the agranulocytes that are there in the WBC, the neutrophils, which is a granulocyte, and the monocytes, which is a agranulocyte, of these components, 6 to 8% of the neutrophils and the monocytes, they are phagocytic in nature. So, phagocytic means they are capable of destroying foreign organisms entering the body. So, any sort of foreign organisms, be it a pathogen such as the bacteria, fungi or viruses, whatever it is, these neutrophils, that is 6 to 8% of the neutrophils and monocytes, which are the granulocytes and the agranulocytes respectively, they are capable of destroying those pathogens. Phagocytic means they go to the pathogen, they detect the pathogen that is entering into our body, and they completely engulf the pathogen, killing it, therefore protecting a body from various infections. So that is their main function. Next, talking about basophils. What are the basophils? They are the granulocytes present in the WBC, right? And basophils are very, very less in number. That is, only 0.5 to 1% of the WBCs are made up of basophils. So what is the function of the basophils? So these basophils actually secrete certain enzymes. What are the different enzymes? They secrete certain histamines, they secrete serotonin, they secrete heparin. So histamine is a chemical messenger that sends various messages to the brain and the spinal cord and all that. Then serotonin is also a message it is also a chemical messenger that actually carries information to the brain about a mood. So serotonin can also be called as the happy hormone. So therefore, if all these histamine, serotonin, heparin, etc., if they have to get secreted, then what is responsible? It is the basophils that are responsible for that. So the function of basophil is to secrete histamine, serotonin, heparin, etc. And these components that are there, they are actually involved in inflammatory reaction. So whenever our body is attacked by a foreign substance, our body gets inflamed. So that inflammatory reaction is actually because of the secretions of histamine, serotonin and heparin by the granulocytes of the WBC, which is called as the basophils. Next, talking about eosinophils. So 2 to 3% of the WBC consists of eosinophils, and they are the granulocytes, and their main function is to protect the body against infection, and also they are associated with various allergic reactions. Every now and then we are exposed to pollutants. We are exposed to a lot of pollen grains in the environment, right? We are exposed to a lot of dust. But imagine if eosinophils are very less in our body, what happens? Every now and then we will fall ill, but thanks to this particular granulocyte that are present in the WBC, that is eosinophils, which actually protects our body from infections and various allergic reactions. And not just that, there are lymphocytes. So what are lymphocytes? Lymphocytes are the agranulocytes present in the WBC. Two types of agranulocytes in the WBC. One is monocyte and the other one is lymphocyte. We shall look into what is the function of the lymphocytes. So about 20 to 25% of the WBC is made up of lymphocytes, and there are two major types of lymphocytes, that is B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. Both these B and T lymphocytes are responsible for immune responses of the body. Our immune system in our body mainly depends on the two types of lymphocytes, which are the A granulocytes of the WBC. What are the two types of lymphocytes? The B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. Even the cancer cells are all, our body is also protected against the cancer cells because of the B and the T lymphocytes. So therefore, they provide a high amount of immunity in a body. So these are the functions of the different granulocytes and the A granulocytes that are present in the WBC or the leukocytes of the blood. So this is about the leukocytes. Next, talking about platelets. Platelets is also a formed element that is present in the blood, right? So platelets, they have one more name. They are also called as thrombocytes, and they are the cell fragments that is produced from megakaryocytes. So megakaryocytes are some special structures that are present in the bone marrow. So of course, bone marrow also helps in the production of good amount of red blood cells. Apart from that, in the bone marrow, there are special structures that are present called as the megakaryocytes. And the function of these megakaryocytes is to produce these platelets. So, where are the platelets produced? The platelets are produced by the special cells called megakaryocytes present in the bone marrow. The blood, a normal adult human being's blood, it contains about 1,50,000 to 3,50,000 platelets per millimeter cube of the blood. Function of platelets. What are the functions? The platelets can release a variety of substances, and these substances are very much important for the clotting or the coagulation of the blood. So apart from fibrinogen protein present in the plasma of the blood, there are certain substances that are produced by the platelets also, which help in the clotting or the coagulation of the blood. And a reduction in the number of platelets can also cause a clotting disorder. We all have heard about hemophilia, right? So a hemophilic person actually produces very less amount of platelets in his body or in the blood. So that is why the clotting of the blood doesn't occur very fast in such particular person. So therefore, clotting of the blood is very, very important, and that is done by platelets. So platelets play a major role in clotting, and this actually, if the blood doesn't clot properly or if the person is having a clotting disorder, it will lead to excessive loss of blood from the body. So the main function of the platelet. So there is an clinical range, that is how much amount of platelet has to be present in the blood. If it is below that clinical range, then that means that the person is suffering from a clotting disorder. So this was about the platelets. So I hope you understood this session very well, wherein we studied about the blood, the definition of blood, what blood exactly is. We also learnt about the different components of the blood. We learnt about the plasma. We learnt about the formed elements that are present in the blood, such as the erythrocytes and the leukocytes and the platelets. And also under the leukocytes, we studied about the functions of the different A granulocytes and the granulocytes that are present in the leukocytes. So I hope you understood this session very well. In the coming session, we shall discuss about the blood grouping, that is the ABO blood grouping, and we also shall discuss about the coagulation factors in the blood, or how clotting of the blood occurs. So we shall meet again in the coming session. Thank you.